Just to know the history, to know where this school was and how it's grown and how it's changed. I think that's a very important part of their past.
Idlewild Elementary School, opened in the year 1957, was the first of its kind. It was a school that brought people together, built a community, and shared its years shaping brilliant young minds.
We reach every child. We feel like every child is important. Like, I am somebody, I am special.
Idlewild has seen the time of segregation, integration, and school uniforms.
To be a teacher is something that you have got to want. It's got to be in you.
The changing times are evident in the school's history and wears on the walls, but soon the school will be getting a much-needed facelift. Starting April 2008, one of the two Idlewild Elementary School buildings will be torn down in an effort to update its facilities. Teachers will lose their classrooms, students will lose their playgrounds, but one gifted fifth-grade class will struggle in keeping the memory alive.
It is going to be different, but change is good. We'll be sad, but you have to move on in life. So I think I'll be looking forward to it.
A regular day at Idlewild Elementary School starts at 9:15 a.m. For Miss Cable's gifted fifth-grade class, it isn't just another day of language arts and mathematics. Today they will begin a research project on none other but their alma mater. They prepare by learning techniques of interviewing and gathering resources.
What I'm teaching you is the talent that people need to be behind the camera. You need to hold it right. You need to know how to place your subject. You have to place your subject in the center of the screen. Center.
Back here.
Where are you?
After a few weeks of gathering information, the students run into a few snags.
I think the biggest problem was that there wasn't as much information on the 50s as there were on other decades.
This isn't stressing me out because I know that when we get to interview the historian, I might get a lot of information about specific things about the school.
You learn how to work together. We all, our multiple intelligence clash into this part of the 70s.
Everybody's done, but we're trying to think up more questions to ask.
We're still trying to get some of the information on the what type of music, and we have most of our stuff on transportation. We just need some pictures.
Well, I have television, telephones, and sports segregation, integration, uniforms. And I was listing the sports, different types of teams and sports that we have in Charlotte and sports that we have in the school.
However, they rely on each other and get each other through the ups and downs.
Just take one and pass them on. And if I don't have enough, then I'll send one to you in a little bit.
When Dr. Tom Hanchett, a historian from the Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, comes to class, a lot of general questions about the area are answered.
Sometimes you find history written down. Like Miss Jones, when she called around, somebody looked up and found out that this was made in built in the 1950s. But sometimes you can't find answers that way. Sometimes you get better answers if you ask somebody.
Do you know when the internet was first invented?
When I was in the Air Force, I belonged to a communications group, and we did the initial work using the internet, and I know we used a lot of those little index cards with the pre-punched holes.
Okay.
So we used a lot of that in order to get our programming done. It was very long and tedious.
So there were computers, and the computers started pretty much in World War II. And then they figured out how to hook the keyboards to them, and then they figured out the internet. A lot of those figuring outs were done for the military. And so the fact that Miss Capel was working with the internet before I ever heard of it is real interesting and a really cool piece of oral history.
Dr. Tom Hanchett suggested the Carolina Room at the public library, where DeKayla discovered that the school first had air conditioning in 1977.
Desegregation began the same year Idlewild was built in 1957.
Looking in all of the Charlotte Observers from 1957 that have been preserved on microfiche, and they're trying to find any mention of Idlewild that they can find. They learned how to use the machines, how to load the film and use the machines.
Okay, any luck yet?
No luck yet, but I think they're learning that doing research used to be a lot harder than it is for them.
And it takes a lot of patience.
Yes.
And they look like they're pretty patient.
They've been working very hard.
However, not a lot of information was gathered about Idlewild Elementary itself until one very special person visited. Mr. Merrill was the principal at the time Idlewild Elementary School was built.
I was the first principal of the school.
At 84, Mr. Merrill was full of great information about how the school used to be during its start in 1957.
When it first opened, it was a segregated school. And later on, when the county made some different changes, we picked up the Lincoln Heights area children, and we became an integrated school.
He was principal for 15 years until 1972. Picking up where Mr. Merrill left off, Miss Cleo Gullett.
I am an old lady.
You don't look that old.
Thank you. That was very nice. Yes, we had a few buses, but we didn't have as many students, so of course the children who could walk in just naturally walked in. Yes, it was just one really main building, and all in the front where you have this new part of the building was just part of the lawn in the parking lot. It was integrated, but not as completely as it is now, because the neighborhood was not completely integrated. But it's hard for you to imagine a school without computers, but that's just the way it was. One time, this pair of mallard ducks decided that was going to be their home. In those days, you left the doors to the hall open sometimes, and they would just go waddling down the hall, and the mother and all the little ducks, and the children loved it. Had the greatest PTA ever in the history of the world. That was one of the strengths of this system.
So I'm guessing you was active during the moment?
Very active, and the parents were wonderful.
The third principal for Idlewild Elementary was Mr. Charlie Yates, who passed away. However, we are lucky enough to meet Miss Libby Udy, whose position was the school secretary through 4 principals. She concentrated her information strictly on Mr. Yates.
Well, I was the secretary in the office. I was the principal secretary, and I did attendance and greeted parents and enrolled students and all those things you have to do to keep a school going. Well, the first principal was Ms. Gullett, and I came with her. When Mr. Merrill left, he took his secretary, so there was an opening for a secretary. So I came with Ms. Gullett from Highland. He was he was so organized, and he liked doing that kind of thing, and he wanted his teachers to have time to do the very most important thing, which was teach. He used to have something in the spring called Spring Fling, and it was out on the yard, and a lot of those students who lived over in the Lincoln Heights area of town didn't have transportation. Mr. Yates would go and bring a whole bunch of them back over here and let them have a good time. He was a very kind, compassionate man, loved children, and his staff. He was a great principal.
From information gathered from his wife, Mr. Leon Talley, the 4th principal of Idlewild Elementary, began in 1983 and continued for 3 years. LaForest Williams, as the 5th principal, began in 1986 and continued for 8 years until 1994.
School colors then were red and white, and of course the mascot was the Indian. During the years when we were calling ourselves the Idlewild Indians, sometimes that could be very offensive to other ethnic groups. So I knew eventually it would change, but it had not changed before I left. The grade levels in the beginning, we were like K through 3, and then we added grades 4 and 5 and 6. We had what we call the benchmark program, and schools had to make 100% of their benchmarks. And we made that while I was here as principal. And we would do the Pledge of Allegiance. And in each room we had one of these. And this is the advice I would give. I am somebody. I am special. I can learn anything. I can be anything I want to be. That's wonderful. You still do that?
Yes.
Every day.
And to follow the kids, to go see them in Odyssey of the Mind, to go see them participate in things when they did tours through time and all those things, just letting kids be kids. That was fun. I was the assistant principal. Miss Sipes was the principal and I was the assistant principal. We came together and we left together. We were here about 10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
Just 10 years.
And we enjoyed every minute of it.
So every year, for how many years? Started in
2000.
And in 2000, we started giving the Mayo Price Friendship Award. And it's given to one person in the 5th grade. I think each 5th grade teacher nominates somebody from their room, and then the principal selects who it is that will receive the award, and you don't know it until it's time for your banquet. And then half of the day, the kids have a whole big catalog they look through, and they select electives they're going to go to. And so we all got the idea that if we're going to be a magnet school, let's be really unique and special. Nobody else did this in Charlotte. So we had electives. When we came to Idlewild, the superintendent of schools said to me, "Do you know Idlewild is a literacy school?" I said, "I know that." And what he meant was, it was one of 13 schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg that had the lowest reading scores. So there was a lot of work to be done, and we worked long and we worked hard to try and push things up. And we didn't move fast enough to suit us. So after a lot of studying and looking around, we said, you know what? Let's change the way we're doing things. Instead of trying to inch us up, let's train teachers in how to teach students, gifted students. And we'll teach all of our kids like that. And about that same time that idea came, they sent a teacher here from another school. They put her here, and she wasn't real happy to be put here at the time. And her name was Gloria Jones.
When I started out as the talent development teacher, and I only worked here part-time the first year. Then we found out that the school was a proposed magnet, a gifted and talented, or talent development magnet and learning immersion. So we started training our teachers for that. About 2 years before this magnet, we began training the teachers so that when we started the magnet, you know, they were prepared.
Finally, our 7th and current principal is Jane Collins.
When I taught every grade because I taught special education. I taught kindergartners all the way. One year I taught at Independence High School. So we even had 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So I've taught every grade. But at Idlewild, I enjoy every grade level. So y'all trying to get me to pick favorites, aren't you?
Every good school has more than just great principals. In 1981, Idlewild Elementary was blessed to gain Miss Tillman.
This room is like a home away from home. I have been in this room since 1992. I think that was about the year when I came here to 4th grade. And basically, this is like my home because I have made it my own. My personality is in this room, memories, some good, some bad, but this room is very special to me. Many of my students have come back. In fact, this past year, one of my students that I had in 4th grade is now in 2nd year in college, and she came back and she did some observations and she worked with me for about 3 days. And she said, as soon as she walked in the room, she said, "I remember this room I love this room.
After 30 years of teaching and 13 in this particular classroom, Miss Tillman was just weeks away from being moved out due to demolition. One close friend of Miss Tillman could be a loving mother to any of Idlewild students and could warm your heart with just her laugh.
My doodles are everything. We used to have a little courtyard out there in the middle where the fourth graders are now. There used to be a kindergarten hall. And it was a big old open space. And it was we could go out there and we had a bird feeder. It was just like a little living garden. You know, we would go out there and just open up the doors and just to smell and just to smell the fresh air. It's gonna be out at the parking lot. That's where the new building is going. That used to be where the workroom is now. There used to be a classroom. It was bigger than that. It was a classroom. And we had 2 teachers and 2 assistants in there. We had a ball. You talking about some learning going on in there.
Both Miss Cuthbertson and Miss Esposito mentioned a special woman in their lives who was their mentor in the beginning of their teaching career.
And then I came over and I started working with a lovely lady named Mildred Blackwell. She was an awesome teacher.
Yes. I love working with Mildred Blackwell. We were first grade for 10 years and we were like a team. We thought alike, we did things, we were like a team player, team group. And she retired, and then, like I said, I stayed with her for 10 years in first grade. She was awesome.
I was hired March the 17th on St. Patrick's Day in 1973. I taught only the first grade for 25 and a half years. It was a wonderful experience working at Idlewild, and I still love Idlewild. And I hate they're gonna tear it down. But maybe you'll get a new Martin school. My first assistant was Miss Linda Sadler, Isabel Sharp, Miss Cuthbertson, and then Miss Esposito.
I can remember one specific year that our principal approached us and we had kids, a whole class of kids that she felt like she wanted to see if they could all move at the same, they were all on the same level. She wanted to see if they all could move up. We got them all on grade level. At the end of the year, it was hard work, but they all soared, and she called us the buzzing bees.
Being Idlewild secretary is important work. Duties include making 50+ teachers' copies and laminations, answering phones, and greeting parents and students as they arrive in the morning.
In April, I will be here 24 years. When I first moved to Charlotte in 1981, my son started kindergarten at Idlewild. Then I was only a parent. So I got involved with the school through the PTA, through the room parent in the school, and I volunteered in the office. Then when he got third grade, there was a position open for an interim in April, and I finished out the school year as an assistant. I loved it so much that I put in an application in full-time the following year. So I started in 1984.
Teachers can wear many hats, but they cannot do it all. Parents are partners in a child's education. Being involved as a PTA member or even reading to their child before bed can go a long way.
My daughter Beth was here, started in 1977. She was, I believe, in the 2nd kindergarten class at Idlewild. And then Rick came 4 years later, which would have been 81.
Principal was Cleo Gullick. She was just a really neat lady, just kind of like everybody's grandma.
The building at that time did not include this part of the building.
But the old part, which you probably know what the old part was here, and none of the trailers were here.
Area between the buildings that was added when the new building was built by some volunteers with Hands on Charlotte and people here.
A lot of things were in different locations, like the main office is in the same place, but just about everything else is different. The media center and cafeteria, of course, is the same.
I came to Idlewild in 1957. I had been going to Bain Elementary, and then Idlewild was built. Actually, Idlewild and McClinic were built at the same time. When Idlewild was built, my sister and I came to Idlewild, and I attended fifth grade, Miss Lemon, I believe, was my teacher in fifth grade, and Miss Dula was my teacher in sixth grade. And in 1994, I came back to Idlewild. I had been home raising children, and I started, when my children got older, I came back and started doing some substitute teaching. And I fell in love with the population, because Idlewild has such a diverse population, and a lot different than when I was at Idlewild. But I fell in love with the population, and at that time we had a principal, Sam Sipes, who I just felt like I was learning so much from. She was a real visionary type person, and I could just see a lot was going to be going on at Idlewild.
This was a 4-month project for Miss Capel's gifted 5th grade class. This class is special because they are the first magnet class to start from kindergarten. They started out thinking this was just another assignment, but in the end their young hearts opened up to the history of their school, and they began to understand.
The first time we started the interview, I thought it was going to be boring as soon as I found out Idlewild was made in 1957.
History is important, more than you might think. And history can be lost as soon as nobody can remember it or a building is torn down.
This has been a great experience. I personally think that it's very important that we do this because soon this school will be gone and we as inspiring 5th graders are keeping all the great history of it.
I also understand how the school has changed over the years, from the first day it opened, to the day it integrated, to the day I'm writing this paper.
But sometimes changes are good to make the school stronger. But one thing is for sure, I'm really going to miss this place.
Children grow up. Technology advances. Buildings are demolished and rebuilt. Even though time will always travel on and our worlds change again and again, we will always have each other. We will always have our history. We will always keep the memory alive.